powerful testimony. I want to ask Sohrab a question, because I know he has to go a little bit earlier. But I just want to take note that the UPR session tomorrow is something that our organization, UN Watch, studies. We've done a number of substantial studies on the UPR process, and one of the criticisms, something that Sohrab has referenced, is that too often you have countries with very poor human rights records taking the floor to praise each other, something that has been described as a mutual praise society. But at the same time, there are a certain number of governments who take the UPR process very seriously. Some of them are present here, and we salute those who take this process as it was meant to be used, to use the very short amount of time that they have, whether it's 1 minute or 2 minutes, or can sometimes submit advanced written questions, to use their time to ask a specific, concrete question that holds the government accountable to their universal human rights obligations, and that make recommendations that are specific and concrete, and that push the envelope in a way that helps victims. Not recommendations that say, oh, we recommend that China continues to promote and protect human rights in such an incredible way, which are not constructive and serious recommendations. So there are a number of countries and governments that take their responsibilities seriously. We salute those countries who do that. We encourage them to reflect on what they've heard today, including the powerful testimony from a torture victim, and to make sure that the short time they have to give voice to victims is used in the most substantial and significant way. It's important, and I know that many delegations take it seriously, and that's why it's important to bring experts from Iran here today. Sohrab, I wanted to ask you, here at the United Nations, the international community, in the past year or two, since we have a new government in Iran, a new president, there's the sense that there's something different. We used to have Ahmadinejad. He would come to New York at the UN every year. He would make very inflammatory statements, and he was seen as a pretty nasty figure. However, there is a sense, and many media reports say that now there's a new moderate president named Rohani, that there's a new moderate policy, that things are different. And there were many news reports about this new moderate government. In your expert view, someone who monitors this very closely, are things on the ground, has policy changed? Are things on the ground different for minorities, for victims, for human rights groups, for human rights activists? And it's a question I'm going to pose to the whole panel, but I'll ask Sohrab first if you could address this.
Thank you, Hillel, for the question. There's a Persian proverb that roughly translates to. Apologize. There's a Persian proverb that roughly translates to the snake may shed its skin but not its temper. And I think that applies to the Islamic Republic in the sense that you have a president who's very good at putting forward a moderate-seeming face to the world, but if you look at any of the indicia of a moderate government as a matter of policy, you don't domestically. I mean, you don't see much of a difference. So, I mentioned the case of Pastor Fathi. He's still in jail, and someone who I would consider a colleague, the Washington Post's reporter in Iran, Jason Rezaian, was arrested over the summer. And has been held without charge. He's been detained for 2-3 months now. So journalists are still under attack. The executions still go on, including public executions. And then as far as the regime's face to the rest of the world, yes, Mr. Rohani speaks in more moderate tones and doesn't call for member states of the United Nations to disappear from the books of history or from the map or whatever the exact translation is. But on the other hand, on a weekly basis, regime supporters gather on the streets of Tehran and say death to America, death to Britain, death to Israel. So if for one weekend, one Friday prayers, they could refrain from calling for death to entire member states of the United Nations, that would be a great marker of moderation. But we haven't seen a weekend like that yet. Hello, thank you.
Mohammed, what is your sense? You're someone who left Iran a few years ago. You knew the old regime. Are we seeing differences? Because again, there is a sense, I hear often at the UN, people that I meet, that it's something different. People on the ground, are they experiencing something different?
You know, in Iran, we have three main departments, such as government and judiciary and also parliament. According to the constitution law, it's not like that. These three are independent, but actually the most important issue, human rights issues and respect to human rights, is having independent judiciary. Unfortunately, we don't have independent judiciary because of this problem. Government cannot do anything. In nuclear policy, in human rights policy, and others most important issues, government cannot do anything. A part of judiciary and a part of the country is in hand of the security service, intelligence service, and SEPA, information ministry, and data rahbari is Iranian leadership. Iranian leader is first person who will decide about.
That's the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei.
Yeah, Ayatollah Khamenei, and this man is the main person, and others. No, leader of the judiciary will choose with Ayatollah Khamenei and others. We don't have fair election in Iran because of Ayatollah Khamenei's position. We don't have independent judiciary because of Ayatollah Khamenei's position, and we have human rights abuses because of this issue. We have a group in Iran. His name is Sarbazan Imam Zaman, the unknown soldiers, are govern Iranian government. This group they get order from supreme leader, and they are working on these kind of abuses. My meaning is, if we have independent judiciary, and I want to say an example is close. Last week, a group, we don't know who, tried to attack the women with acid to their face. More than 4 women injured with acid. And in Isfahan, people in Isfahan demonstrated on the street. And after that, what happened in Iran? Government started to arrest the journalists in Isfahan, and some journalists in IRNA news agency, and they couldn't arrest nobody on this case, on this important case. Why? Because a group of Iranians, this group I said to you, they say we have to treat women who has not hijab in Iran. Hijab is so important in Iran. But these are our problems. No, we don't have independent judiciary. We have a lot of executions. We have discriminations in Iran. We don't have fair election in Iran. And we don't have fair process of the courts in Iran. I want to say, honestly, I had more than about 1,000 cases in Iran, and most of them were criminal cases. I couldn't find I couldn't find some cases who have the fair process. Unfortunately, most of them, in most of them, we saw that human rights abuses in most of the cases, torture, and also for death penalty, lacking the fair process of the court, and etc.
Thank you. Marina, maybe I'll ask you, you're in Canada now, you're involved in so many activities and writing and trying to also bring your experiences onto the stage and reaching out to young people. When people talk to you about Iran, what is their sense about Rohani, and what is your sense about what's happening on the ground, and to what extent is there any kind of a disconnect between people that you meet, what their sense of things are going on and what's actually happening on the ground?
Well, I guess there's always a sense of disconnect because for the majority of people in the West, Iran is this land far, far away. And one has to rely on what one hears on the news. And the news doesn't really do it justice. So, yeah, I do what I can do. And the main angle of the work that I do is the fact that I did not choose, but the fact that I am a witness. A witness is nothing unless the witness testifies. So that's my job. Not only I testify, I try to help others do the same thing, because there's this amazing quote. It's an African proverb that says, as long as the lion doesn't have his own storyteller, the hunter gets the best part of the story. So my job is basically to make sure that the victim actually has a capable storyteller. I'm a storyteller, so that's what I do. Now, when it comes to Rohani, I mean, yeah, you guys are right on. A lot of people have this notion. I call Rohani the smiley face who kills with his cute little smile. I mean, that is what he is. He's a relatively good-looking guy compared to Ahmadinejad. I mean, it was so easy to laugh at him. But Rohani looks much more handsome, if one could say that. He's better dressed. He looks relatively intelligent. He knows how to talk. He knows how to behave. And he's always smiling. I mean, it's much easier to kill with a smile. And you can get away with it, right? Than to kill the way Ahmadinejad did, with a frown and yelling and screaming, and I want to cut everybody's head off. But if you're smiling, I mean, you might actually get away with bloody murder. So that is exactly what Rohani is doing. He's getting away with bloody murder. The number of executions in Iran since Rohani came into power, they have not decreased. They have increased. I mean, that speaks for itself. You can say whatever you want to say, as long as, what is it that you're doing, Mr. Rohani? I mean, I can say I'm a great human rights lover, but as long as I'm executing more and more people by the day, that means that I am just simply lying. And Mr. Rohani is just simply lying with a smile. Let's remember this, because in this work of fiction here, it says that Iran has democratic elections. Now, every time I hear that, I want to bang my head against the wall. People, let's get this straight. Okay, let's imagine that this room is Iran. Let's just use your imagination. I'm a writer, okay? I love doing that. So let's say this room is the Islamic Republic of Iran. You are the people of Iran. And let's say, again, we have a fictional scenario. So I'm the supreme leader. Okay, sorry I'm a woman, but again, you're using your imagination, right? So I'm the supreme leader, and I tell you, my dear people of Iran, you are absolutely free. So we are going to have this absolutely free election, and in this absolutely free election, Mr. Mustafai and Mr. Noor they are the ones who are going to run for president. And you're absolutely free, like, I mean, absolutely, completely free to choose between the two of them. Is that freedom to you? That is not freedom. As Mr. Mustafai was saying so beautifully and so clearly, as long as there is a position of a supreme leader in Iran, he can veto the decisions of the parliament, of the president, of of everybody. Under a system like that, where there is this figure of something called a supreme leader, freedom cannot exist. It is inherently impossible to have freedom in a system like that. So if we scrap the position of the supreme leader, and if we actually allow the people of Iran, whether they are Baha'i, they are Christian, they are Zoroastrian, they are absolutely atheists, we allow everybody and anybody, a man or woman, to run for president in Iran. If me, Mr. Mustafai, Sepide, anybody who was born in Iran is an Iranian citizen, can actually run for president regardless of their gender and of their religion, and without the position of a supreme leader, then we can start talking. But before that, there is no such thing at all, nothing that even resembles remotely democracy in Iran.
Thank you, Marina.